In this video, we are going to animate explosions, spawn explosions on collision, and destroy explosions that we don't need in our scene anymore. So let's get started. First, let's cover crash explosion. So again, I will need animation and animator, and move animation above or below the scene, so it is easy to see. First, let's go with crash explosion. Let's add it to the hierarchy. Then we need to add animator and have that clip, create the clip. So animator, go to controllers, let's create new animator controller, and we are going to call it crash explosion. This explosion will be used when enemy hits the ground. Now let's attach that crash explosion to animator component, apply to prefab, and now we will create clips. So I will just select clips folder, create, and call it crash explosion. In that clip we will use sprites from explosions, and in these explosions we have multiple explosions inside one sprite, so regions that we will use for this are 8 to 15. So this 8 will be first, and to 15 these regions will be used. Let's lower the samples to 10, and let's try to play it just to see that it looks nice. So that looks okay. You can even lower it down or up if it doesn't meet your expectations. For me, this samples 10 looks okay. Let's stop the preview mode, go to crash explosion, apply to prefab, and let's save everything. So this includes clip, player prefab, player idle, player controller, crash explosion controller. Just save selected, save everything. And now we need to move to the next explosion. So we can just remove crash explosion from the scene since we don't need it. And the next is hit explosion, that will be used when the bullet hits the enemy. Again, add component, animator. Inside controllers, let's create another animator controller, hit explosion, and let's create a clip, hit explosion. Sprites for this explosion, we are going to use sprites from, let's see, this is explosions 0, so from 0 to 7. Drag them into the animation, set samples to 10, and let's test and see that this looks okay. It seems okay. Now we can apply this to prefab and remove this hit explosion from our scene. Now we don't need animator and animation anymore, so I will just drag this window down so we can see our scene nicely. Now the next part is to destroy this explosion when the animation is finished. So first we will add animation auto destroy script. Inside scripts, let's add it to utils, create new C# script, animation auto destroy. Let's open the script and add our namespace. This script will be used to destroy explosion once the clip is finished. So I will just remove the methods, and let's add the namespace from list utils. It will be the same, since this script is pretty much reusable. It can be used basically with any other game, since we just destroy the game object based on animation. Now the first step is to spawn these explosions. So to spawn explosions, we have to instantiate those prefabs. Since logic for destroying enemy is in enemy component, we are going to add fields for explosions. So let's open our enemy CS, and we need some fields. So let's add comment fields. These fields are hit explosion prefab and crash explosion prefab. So private game object hit explosion prefab. This time we will not use marker components, but you can create component explosion if you want. It is just another way of doing the same thing. This needs to have serialized field, since we will attach that in editor. Private game object crash explosion prefab. With marker component, this might be easier and we could avoid some errors, but let's not worry for now about those marker components. We can add that even later. So to keep hierarchy clean, again, it is a good idea to have parent game object as container for explosions. So in our parent names, we will add another constant, public const string explosions parent name is equal to explosions. And in this parent, we will just keep explosions and our hierarchy will be clean. Now in enemy class, we have to add start method. In that start method, we need to initialize our explosions parent. So we need field private game object explosions parent. Now let's add start method explosions parent is equal to game object dot find parent names. First we need to add that import. So using learn programming academy.astroassault.utils, and now we can use our class parent names dot explosions parent name. If that object wasn't found, we will create it. So if not explosions parent, then explosions parent is equal to new game object with the name. Notice there is another overloaded constructor, parent names explosions parent name. And now we need to spawn explosion when the enemy hits something. So to spawn explosion, it is similar principle that we use to spawn enemies. We will create a spawn explosion method and we will call it before we destroy our objects inside this on trigger enter 2D. So let's add another comment, private methods, and here we are going to add private void spawn explosion, and in this method we need the prefab. So we will add parameter game object explosion prefab. It depends on what our object is hitting. So prefab, whatever our object hits, we will call this spawn explosion with different parameter. So here we need to instantiate explosion prefab. Game object explosion game object is equal to instantiate explosion prefab. This is the parameter. Explosion parent dot transform will be the parent for this game object. And now we just need to position it to the same position where the enemy is. So explosions game object explosion game object transform dot position is equal to transform dot position. We want to position the explosion at the same position where the enemy is. Now we can call these spawn explosions before we destroy everything. So if it is a bullet, then we have hit explosion prefab. So we will just call spawn explosion with parameter hit explosion prefab. And for the ground, we will call spawn explosion with parameter crash explosion prefab. And now I will just remove these necessary empty lines. So this will spawn explosion and then we will destroy bullet and enemy. If enemy hits the ground, we will spawn explosion and destroy the enemy. So this code, instead of duplicating these two lines, we can easily create a method. Now let's save this script, go back to Unity editor. In editor we have to attach those game objects to enemy prefabs. So let's select prefab, first midship. You will notice now in enemy script we can attach hit explosion prefab and crash explosion prefab. So we can attach this directly to prefab without dragging this to the hierarchy and then apply. All we have to do is take this hit explosion and drag it to hit explosion prefab, crash explosion to crash explosion prefab. Now small ship, the same principle, hit explosion goes to hit explosion and crash explosion goes to crash explosion. Now we can save everything and let's run and see if we have any problems. So let's run this game. Now when the bullet hits the enemy, you will notice that explosions are playing forever. So that is one of the problems. The problem is because every clip automatically loops. So in our clips folder, hit explosion and crash explosion, we will select both, but multi-object editing is not supported, so we have to select one by one. Notice there is a loop time, and that means our clip will loop forever. So we will just turn off the loop time on those two. Now let's save those clips and run the game again. Now you will see another problem that we have. If I shoot at the enemy, explosion plays, but there is a dot left on the screen. So what is that dot? That dot is hit explosion, and it is the last frame of explosion. On the bottom you will notice there are other sort of dots or the sprites that keep inside the game. We don't want that to have inside the game. So to destroy explosions, we created that animation auto destroy script to help us with this. Through script we will get the length of animation. So let's go back to our Visual Studio and let's open animation auto destroy. From that script, since we need the animator to get component animator and to get the clip length, we can easily add that this animation auto destroy requires component type of animator. Animator, not animation. So be careful with this. And for the fields, we will have animator, but also a field destroy delay. For some objects, you might want to have a small delay before destroying, so that last frame can play and then there is a delay, then object gets destroyed. If we destroy it immediately at the last frame, it will be hard to see the last frame. So let's add fields. First is private float destroy delay is equal to some small number like 0.1. And we want to have that available at the edit time or inside the editor. A good idea would also be to add a range, but for the maximum value we can't guarantee what can be maximum value, so I will not add range attribute. And the next field is private animator. Then we need our start method, so messages start. Inside the start method we will get animator component, so animator is equal to get component animator. And now from the animator we can get the current state and length. So float animation length is equal to animator dot get current animator state info. Then we need layer index. Since we don't have any layers, layer index is 0. Dot length. This will give us the current duration of the state. And now the total time that object will live is total time. So float total time is equal to animation length plus destroy delay. After we have all this, we can just call destroy, and there is overloaded method that accepts time. This will destroy the object after time. So we want to destroy this game object. Animation auto destroy script will be attached to explosion. So we are destroying explosion game object after animation length and destroy delay. So after the total time. Total time. And now let's save this script, go back to editor, and we need to add this to our prefabs. But you will notice in clips there is a controller hit explosion that doesn't belong to clips. So I will just move it to controllers, but first to animations, and then from animations to controllers. Well, it doesn't want to go to that folder because there already is one hit explosion controller. So we have two controllers, and which controller are we using? Well, let's see. In prefabs we have hit explosion and there is hit explosion. We are using the one in animations folder. So in controllers we can delete this hit explosion since it is not used and move hit explosion to controllers folder. Now this hit explosion, we have to check if we have that clip. So hit explosion is controller. Let's check animator. We have hit explosion state that has hit explosion motion, And in animation, we don't have anything selected, so select hit explosion. In animation, we can see and play the preview, so that is okay. Be careful that you don't duplicate by accident controllers, because that way you are creating mess inside the project. So back to that animation auto destroy. In prefabs, we are going to add that component or script to crash explosion and hit explosion. So we can select both, add component, animation auto destroy. Now let's save everything, save all, and let's run the game. Now the animations should get destroyed automatically. So if I shoot one enemy, there is explosion and it disappears from the parent, so it is destroyed. And now we can destroy the enemies and have nice animations inside our game. I will see you in the next video.